I think everyone's kind of settling in now. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I know we'll have a few more people joining us here in a minute or so, but I'm going to start off with a few announcements, and then Linda's going to follow up and the rest of the crew. So I do want to welcome the new class. Hopefully, we got a few people from the new class here today. If you were here, I don't know if you can make a little sound or not a sound, a little icon on there, and we'd just let us know we got a few people from the new class. That would be great. There we got one. Maybe we got another. So I'm glad you guys came. Hopefully we'll see a few more little icons popping up. But doing a real quick, a couple announcements. Now, this coming week is Fair Week, and hopefully you get a chance to come out and check it out. The other big event is coming up is SIWA, and Linda's going to follow up with some more details with that. But I do want to make a plea. We are in search for some committee chairs. And I think Linda's going to follow up with some additional information, maybe some others as well. But we are looking for committee chairs for the speakers group. And probably for that, the best thing to do is reach out to me. But we're also looking for a chair or co-chair for community events, and also chairs or co-chairs for social events as well. So if you're interested in any of those, reach out to me or reach out to Linda. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get some new faces. If you think you have just general interest, just let us know. You can probably set you up with someone else so you can share the load, and that would be great. We are looking for, again, committee chairs for the speakers group, community events, co-chair, and co-chairs for the social events. And I know we have our speaker is going to be speaking here today is April Thompson. And I was going to just do a little shout out. I'm working with April on creating a few classes, continuing classes at Montgomery College in the upcoming year that kind of relate to her topic here today. Now, as we develop that, I'll have you more details, probably a course on food foraging and maybe one on mushrooms, identification and usage there, and probably both of them at Tacoma Park. And at this point, I think I'm going to hand the baton over to Linda and let her take it.
Great. Thanks, Steve, and good morning to everybody. It's good to see all those names on the screen and a few faces. But I did want to take an opportunity to welcome the 2025 interns. I know I got to see you during your training, and I've seen a few of you in the field now. So look forward to seeing you more and more as we go by. So welcome. I have four announcements. The first is from Baywise. The Baywise field training class will be held on Thursday, September 25th at Durwood from 10 to 12 in the multipurpose room and outdoors. So if it rains a little bit, we'll still have training. In this training, you will have the opportunity to discuss and practice using the new Maryland Living Landscapes metric, which takes the place of the old yardstick or checklist of things you can do that are environmentally friendly for your yard. And we're going to work through some of those site visit scenarios with your Baywise peers. So if you are a current Baywise Master Gardener or you're an aspiring Baywise Master Gardener, you must take this training. There are going to be a few other trainings in other counties, but you must take this in order to continue or to join the group. Once again, the Baywise field training is Thursday, September 25 from 10 to 12 o'clock at Durwood. And you can check the Maine Master Gardeners Groups IO for the announcements, or you can contact me, Linda Barrett. Second announcement. This is from the Fairgrounds Garden. Pam Bates is our fabulous fairgrounds garden chair. I'm saying that. She didn't say that. Um, but she wants to remind everyone that the Montgomery County Fair starts on Friday. Fair volunteers should carefully read the instructions that were sent earlier to them and to be on the lookout for any updates that Pam may send in the future. Pam says that by now everyone should have either picked up their fair tickets, that's your ticket to get into the fair, or have made arrangements with Pam to pick them up. Please contact Pam Bates directly if you have any questions. And for anybody that has not volunteered, we hope you stop by the fairgrounds garden to our tent, see our master gardeners there. We hope to see you at the fair. Okay. Third announcement. This is from Close Encounters with Agriculture. They provide a rare opportunity for fourth grade students to enjoy a hands-on learning experience, which can really have an impact on their lives. There are 3 program areas. There's the environmental track, which includes soils. And I also understand that soils now include the rain buffers. So soils and rain buffers. There's some information about aquatics, wildlife habitat, and watershed conservation. So that's environmental track. There's also the nutrition track, which encourages healthy eating and includes information about what parts of a plant do we eat. And then finally, the third part or third track is production agriculture, which features lessons on dairy, goats, horses, and corn, and learning where our food comes from. Master gardeners and interns provide assistance for this major annual event, which is held at the Agricultural History Farm Park at Durwood. Dates for Close Encounters include, this is always my favorite, August 27th, the goodie bag stuffing. October 6th is the setup day, so all the tents and whatever and materials get ready. And then the classes with the kids are the week of October 7th, the week of October 13, the week of October 20, and the week of October 27th. You can check the Close Encounters announcement on the main Groups IO if you want, and to sign up or for more information. All this information that I just gave is on the Groups IO. We're looking forward to seeing many of you at Close Encounters. If you have any questions, contact Gail Green or Mark Traversa. And then Steve already said that we're looking for some committee chairs, and Dave Ottolini is our nominations coordinator. So you can contact Steve, you can contact Dave, you can contact me, Linda. But we're looking for people to help with social events. Carol and I have been doing this for a while. We just want to have some other people that know what to do. So it's the holiday party, it's the picnic, and other social things. We're also looking for the Speakers Bureau for committee chair and community events, those one-time table type things. So once again, contact Steve or Dave or myself. And that's the end of announcements. All right, I'm going to put on my other hat. Doop. And I'm going to quickly go through our Master Gardener recognitions for the month. And let me see. I think I started at the end. There we go. Beginning. Yay. All right. So this is our, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So this is our August Master Gardener recognition. Pretty crepe myrtle here. Start with the Baywise Committee. They would like to recognize 3 people. Buffy Elliott, who's a Master Gardener. She wrote the seed article that I believe came out in the seed at the beginning of this month about having your landscape Baywise certified. And very nice article, and we want to thank her for writing that. And then we want to recognize Carol Roman and Callie Neely. They are people that we call apprentices or interns with our Baywise program. They're working toward taking the field class and becoming part of our group. So thank you to them. They've gone on some of our site visits to kind of get an idea of what we do. And the Youth Garden was recognizing Rosemary McCabe and Jania Traxler. They joined the youth garden last year. They've both been volunteering the after school and summer program. They do a little bit of everything and just kind of pitch in and help out all over. So thank you to them as new members of the White Oak Youth Garden. And in therapeutic horticulture, Vivian Burke. Vivian is leading one of the largest therapeutic horticulture programs at Brook Grove, and she's been doing that for about 25 years. So big thank you to her. And then Eleni Clark and Carol Logan are two people that have been mirroring what Lisa and Wendy do, so that they're going to take over as chairpersons of the therapeutic horticulture program next year. And then Joanne Mueller has chaired the therapeutic horticulture program for 24 years. She continues to lead two different programs, the Lay Hill Nursing Home and the Marion House Assisted Living programs. And finally, Sarah Wattenberger is an intern. She came to the program wanting to help and ended up accepting as the chairperson for the Kensington Nursing Home and restarting that program with therapeutic horticulture. So thank you to Sarah for bravely going in as an intern to do that. And then speaking of interns, our 2025 intern representative to the board is Tracy Kataski. She just got appointed to that position, and we're looking forward to working with her over the next year. So if you are an intern and you have questions about what's going on with Master Gardeners, you could contact Tracy at any time, or anybody else on the board is okay too. But Tracy's the person that would have answers for you. All right, that's the end of the recognitions, and I'm going to turn it over to Dave to introduce our speaker.
Thank you so much, Lyndon. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday in August. Our guest speaker today is April Thompson, and she is currently the Vice President and former culinary chair of the Mycological Association of Washington, D.C. She's a D.C. Master Gardener as well as a Master Naturalist. She specializes in urban foraging excursions, leading walks throughout Washington, D.C. to identify, sustainably gather, and utilize the edible and medicinal plants growing in sometimes unexpected city spaces. Thompson emphasizes seeking out edible invasive species, including garlic muster and lamb's quarters, to help eradicate them. I guess we eat them to eradicate them. She's currently writing Falcon Guide's first ever urban foraging guidebook, and I would love to buy that. Her talk today is about common edible and medicinal mushrooms of the DMV. Okay, April, you're on.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Can.
Awesome. I did recently present to, I think it was the current class on common edible plants, but today we'll be focusing on common edible and medicinal mushrooms of our area, and I'm calling a few other fun guys. See what I did there. Hopefully this will introduce you to the wealth of edible medicinal mushrooms available to us in this region, and how to kind of start to get to know them and feel comfortable not only identifying them, but also how to prepare them safely. So just quickly, what we'll go through here, just an intro to mushroom foraging, identification, and other safety considerations, where to forage, generally speaking, and then I'm going to kind of go through some of the mushrooms by time of year, and with some suggested resources. And this here is my my kitty Ninjette, who loves mushrooms just as much as I do. So if you're not already on board with foraging mushrooms, you know, you might ask yourself, why would I do this when I can just go to the grocery store and buy my own? Well, first of all, that requires going to the grocery store and buying your own, whereas we have really a wealth of free, delicious, nutritious food kind of right underfoot in our own neighborhoods and parks, etc. Um, and many of these species we'll be talking about have really powerful nutritional and medicinal benefits. Mushrooms in general are a great source of ergothioneine, one of the best in across kingdoms. And that is an important amino acid and antioxidant. There are others like lion's mane that are touted for memory loss protection, which as I age, I find I need more and more. For those of us who are trying to, you know, eat more sustainably, lower on the food chain, and also just better for our health. Um, Mushrooms are a great meat substitute, just in terms of, you know, how they stand up to cooking. Fun fact: the one of the key components of mushrooms is chitin, which is also in the skeletons of arthropods, and so that's why when you cook mushrooms, they do not sort of break down into sort of a mushy pile like spinach will, because that kind of it holds its shape. And so it also allows for kind of more meaty preparations. I like using mushrooms to add new flavors to old dishes. And you know, just another excuse, as if we needed one, to walk in the woods and explore your own backyard, deepen your connection to nature and the seasons. And you'll see many of these mushrooms we'll talk about are very seasonal. Some of them hyper seasonal in the sense that they're only up for a few weeks a year. We're just going to go really top line with some of these tips and recommendations for identification and so forth. But one I can't stress enough, we like to say, be 100% sure of what you are eating if you are foraging something 100% of the time. We're not in a situation where, you know, we're in a survival mode where we need to take those kind of risks, so there's no reason to do so. And there's plethora of tools available to make sure that you do know what you're eating. And we say that some fungi are edible, some only once. So not to scare you, but there are mushrooms out there that a small amount of consumption can be deadly. The death cap, the destroying angel being the two most readily available examples in our environment. But I also want everyone to know you can, even the most deadly of mushroom, you are fine handling. You really have to ingest the flesh of it. So if you're new to mushrooms, that's a good thing to know. And you know, we say, you know, leave plenty for the next forager, and for the mushroom itself to reproduce. The the body of the mushroom is really something that you don't see. It's the you know, the underground mycelium that lives year after year after year. The what we call the fruiting body of the that's the above ground piece of the mushroom that we are generally foraging. And you are not damaging that underground mycelium to you know, to take the fruiting bodies, the mushrooms. However, for a mushroom to continue to sporulate and go on and produce new organisms elsewhere, it does need to be able to drop its spores. And mushrooms do have different mechanisms for doing that. Some, like the stinkhorn, are super stinky, which is kind of right on time right now with the corpse flower that just bloomed at the National Botanical Gardens, the U.S. Botanical Garden. I went there yesterday. It was still a little bit stinky as of yesterday midday. But sorry, I'm going down a little rabbit hole here, but just the point being that they have different ways of attracting pollinators or wind pollination. Just like in the plant kingdom, you've got sort of a variety of reproduction um, um, techniques. So, but the point being, you do want to be mindful of what else is out there. Also, foraging that, and we have a lot of species in our environment that do rely on mushrooms as one of their food sources. So it's not just us out there foraging. Get to know your poisonous lookalikes, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but just like in the plant world, there are some genus of mushrooms as well as plants that are safer than others. The photo here on the right is, a classic Amanita muscaria. Amanitas actually have some edible species, but they also have some deadly ones. There are also some mushrooms that can look very similar, but be in different genuses, and you kind of need to be able to key in on the the key differences between them, and we'll get into some general things to be aware of right now. So again, this is going to be very general, but the first thing I like to talk about is just triangulating information, because I sometimes see folks who I mean, I love iNaturalist. Hopefully you guys are already familiar with iNaturalist. It's an incredible tool, and really community on so many levels. But at the end of the day, it is still using artificial intelligence to give suggestions for identification. And then you have community members who will come behind a suggested ID at times and tell you thumbs up or thumbs down, making a different suggestion if you're barking up the wrong tree. But I would not rely on that alone, unless you are getting to like what we call a research grade identification, where a couple of folks have come behind and checked up your ID. Other sources of information, there are other ID groups, especially on Facebook, that are really great, and you have some of the like world-class expert mycologists on there helping confirm IDs. Going out with fellow foragers, using field guides, etc. But some of these species, once you get to know them, you can really be confident, and they have, just like we all have our own quirky characteristics that allow us to recognize one another. So do these species. So and they're what I call one-on-one mushrooms, and then 201 and more expert level mushrooms, where the identification can be a little trickier. So a lot of the ones I'll be talking about today, I think I consider 101 mushrooms that you can be pretty confident in pretty quickly without being an expert mycologist. I already mentioned this, kind of learning, some of these key genuses and related rules of thumb. And when I get into some specific species here, we'll sort of get into that a little more. Just really generally in terms of like the parts of the mushroom to be paying attention to, because this is a little different than those of us who are used to plant identification and the parts of a plant. A lot of times people will send me photos of mushrooms that they see and ask for identification, and they've only shown me the top of the cap, which is generally insufficient information for identification. We've got to see the underside of the mushroom to see what that surface looks like. Here we're on the right here. You can see this is a pored mushroom versus a gilled mushroom. And beyond that, you've got things like, if it is a gilled mushroom, like the one on the bottom left here, are the gills attached to the stem or the stipe? Is there a little area surrounding that where we call that free gills? There's something called false gills, which are chanterelles have false gills. They're really ridges versus true gills. Some of the mushrooms have what we call teeth as a on the underside. You've got things like whether or not the stipe has a ring around, as you see on the bottom left one there. Does it have something called a partial veil, which is as the mushroom comes out of its little egg pod, it will kind of still have a bit of that left over, which is also what the warts of a mushroom are. And those are what you find on Amanita. And that is basically as it comes out of its egg, little bits of that egg that get stuck to the cap, essentially. Bruising, you can see here, this the dark bits on the spongy pores here, that is from pressing on the mushroom. Boletes, which are these mushrooms with pores, although there are some weird boletes that don't have pores, they have gills. Those you're going to want to press on to see if it bruises or not, because that's part of the identification process. And sometimes you hear all mushrooms that bruise are toxic or inedible. That's not true. But that is part of the identification process that is unique to mushrooms and certain types of mushrooms that you obviously won't have in the plant kingdom. Time of year, habitat, also really important. Some mushrooms, really prefer particular trees. Using all of your senses. There are some mushrooms that have really particular odors, and you're going to want to smell the gill side and get a good whiff of those. Things like the cap surface, some of them can be very sticky or velvety. So that's just a really quick overview of some of the things you want to be mindful of when you're looking to identify a mushroom. And spore prints up on the upper left here. That is an example of a spore print. I'm pretty sure that was a brick cap, which is an edible mushroom. An individual spore of a mushroom is not going to be visible to the naked eye, but any individual mushroom will produce billions of spores that if you cut off the stipe and put cap side up so that the gills are downward. If it hasn't yet sporulated, you can get those billions of spores to kind of drop out on a piece of paper or other surface. And you'll be able to like see this beautiful print, and that is literally the spores kind of stacked up on the paper to a degree that you can see the color. And the shape of the spores, obviously, you're only going to see under a microscope, but the color you can see on the spore print like this, and that can be the difference between a deadly and a delicious mushroom in some cases, because the other characteristics sometimes can be subtle, and that can be the thing that really seals the deal. So those are fun to do too. All right. Some other safety considerations. Try one wild species at a time and in a small quantity in case you are sensitive to that mushroom. There are a lot of people who are sensitive to specific species. It doesn't mean that they are, they've misidentified it. Chanterelles, even if I eat way too many chanterelles, I will have some minor GI distress. So I know that and can go easy on that. But there's no way really to know in advance. And if you are at a dinner party, where there's several types of mushroom dishes and they are new to you, it's good to just try one at a time so that if you don't feel well afterward, you know exactly which one was the culprit. Mushrooms, like plants, they will take in all the elements from from the environment, the air, the water, the soil. And so you want to be mindful of where you are foraging, because those things in certain quantities can be taken up by the mushroom. Knowing how to safely prepare a mushroom. Most mushrooms need to be cooked, and some of them need to be cooked particularly well, mainly not to, give you GI upset. Again, that chitin is not something that is easily digestible when raw. So part of the cooking is helping make that chitin more digestible. There are a few mushrooms that are better eaten raw, and I will point those out as we talk about them. And then there are some that can interfere with the metabolism of alcohol, and so shouldn't be consumed with alcohol. So that's another thing to be aware of. And I think this should be obvious, but only forage mushrooms, that are healthy looking and in their prime. Just like if you're at the grocery store, you're not going to want to, pick up a piece of bruised fruit or rotting fruit or whatever. Sometimes newbies I see like get really excited when they find something, but it's just past its prime. And you know what? Just mark the spot to come back next year. It's probably going to reoccur. It's not worth, um, taking a risk with that. And yeah, bugs like mushrooms too. So just be careful to make sure that you have, unless you want some extra protein, that you've making sure that you haven't taken home some riders there. Where to forage. And again, this is just really top line. We're going to go into specific locations. But public lands, every park and jurisdiction is going to have different regulations. So just ask if you're not sure. I know, for example, Shenandoah National Park allows a certain number of mushrooms and berries to be personally foraged on a daily basis, whereas a lot of the other NPS parks do not allow that. So sometimes you can't just assume that. Your own yards and garden beds can host edible mushrooms, whether cultivated or wild. And there's one in particular I'll point out in a minute. Your own friends and neighbors who may have private trails, that can be a good spot for mushrooms that can be legally foraged. I know some folks who, may have hunting ground, but they may not be into hunting mushrooms. So you can ask them if you can take a stroll on their trails. And great to make friends with other foragers for a number of reasons. And one is that sometimes there can be a really prolific haul, and someone not have the bandwidth to dry or otherwise process the mushrooms for later consumption, and be really willing to share the bounty. So that can be another source of foraged mushrooms. Of course, a lot of farmers markets and things like that, you can also find and purchase foraged mushrooms from time to time. Okay, I am going to get into some specific species, and I'm going to start with some that you can find year-round, like this turkey tail here. This is one of the most common mushrooms you will find in the woods year-round. It's gorgeous. It has this is what we call a saprotrophic mushroom, which means that it is a decomposer. And so it will grow on dead or dying wood. You can find this often on stumps and logs and what I call standing dead trees. And it will have these beautiful bands of color like you see here. I intentionally put kind of a range of those colors because it really can range from like this, deep mahogany to gray. And it will have a white pore surface on the underside. So that's one of the important differences from like what we call a false turkey tail. It also has this beautiful velvety surface if you just kind of run your fingers on that. Um, it's what we call a polypore, um, and polypores generally, other than something like the chicken in the woods that we'll talk in a bit, are really tough. So this isn't a mushroom that you are just going to chop up and eat. This is something that you are going to extract the medicinal properties from. And there is a fair amount of research on this. It's considered what we call a non-specific immune modulator. There is research that show that its compounds can inhibit the growth of cancer and tumor cells. One of the best studies I saw of that looked at that in conjunction to traditional treatments. So they looked at traditional cancer treatments, turkey tail alone, and then the combination, and folks recuperated better with a combination of a turkey tail tincture with traditional treatment. So in terms of how you would prepare this, it has both water soluble and alcohol soluble compounds. So you can do what we call a double extraction, um, which is like steeping the mushroom in alcohol for a period of time, and taking the mushroom out, boiling it, combining the water and the alcohol. So I'm going really quickly here just to kind of give you an idea. You can look up recipes for that elsewhere, or just extracting those water soluble properties, steeping it or boiling it for a broth. Or one of the things I like to do is just save a bunch of it, and then grind it up and steep it with my tea or coffee. It doesn't really have any flavor, but again, you're just kind of getting some of the free medicinal benefits. Oysters. Some of the mushrooms I'm talking about here, again, we're kind of going over them with a common name. Some of them have referred to many different species. Oysters are, all in the Pleurotus genus, but there are many different species, and some of them occur in different seasons. Um, this Pleurotus austratus is pretty much the most common species, and you'll find that also on dead and dying wood. Um, it's often on deciduous hardwoods. Um, it has gills. It kind of grows often in shells. You can see at the bottom left there. And they kind of look like oysters, which is why they actually get their name. I added this at the very last minute because I was like, I can't believe that I forgot to talk about the golden oysters. This is a invasive species that has essentially escaped cultivation. They think that some of these grow kits may be responsible for them kind of getting out in the wild, or possibly commercial um, mushroom farms. But they have quickly become an issue for local fungi biodiversity, because they're kind of taking over trees, and they're realizing that there's a reduction in the number of species in the areas where they're taking over. Those are like a bright yellow color. If you Google um, golden oysters and Smithsonian, there was a really good piece on this Smithsonian magazine on these. Um, they aren't as delicious as the other species of oysters, I find. But some people have, um, you know, again, in the spirit of being an invasivore, finding preparations for them. So that's a good one to know. I'm sorry I don't have a picture of this because I kind of realized at the last minute and decided to add that in. I think there's actually some research going on where they're asking people, when they find those golden oysters, to report that. So I can find that reference. In fact, we talked about it in our Ecological Association meeting this week. So I can share that on if that's of interest. And in terms of preparation. Oysters are like a mild flavor. There's so many ways that you can cook these, but they are really good, sort of deep fried and battered, like you see on the right here. Reishi. I can't see my own camera here, but I'm going to show you a couple if you can see me here. A few species of reishi that I just found in my neighborhood. There are, again, many species of this, but you'll really commonly find them on urban trees and things like that. I feel like it's one of the easiest mushrooms to find in the urban environment, which is where I am. One of the characteristics, the key characteristics is this shiny veneer, which hopefully you're able to see this, and you can see that in the photo there. That can have sort of an ombre of reds, browns, yellows, and then the underside, kind of a lighter surface. You'll see them growing on the hardwood, sometimes at the base, sometimes elsewhere. Some species have a stem, some do not, so you can't really count on that. But that shiny veneer is really pretty particular. As reishi or Ganoderma species grow and when they're fresh, they have a really sort of like more juicy white edge to them that is little bit softer. This is another one where generally it's being powdered and used medicinally for teas and things like that. It is extremely bitter. I like to actually use this in making amaros, which is like a bittersweet liqueur. It's known as the mushroom of immortality in Chinese medicine. Another one where there is some evidence of it, having immune boosting properties. And there are some recipes I've seen out there using it in sweets and things like that, but again, powdered first and used in small doses just because it is really, really bitter. Okay, I'm going to go into some mushrooms that you'll find specifically in spring and summer. And this is a good one for gardeners to know. This one goes by many different names, often the wine cap, but sometimes the garden giant, because they can be really huge, and they love growing in garden beds. They love mulch. They're another decomposer, and they can be pretty easily cultivated, and it can help you build healthy soil because they are a decomposer. You you can see from the underside here kind of those dark gills. The ring is also important as an identifier. And when it's younger, it has a partial veil. You could potentially confuse this with some agaricus. An agaricus is a genus that includes your common button mushroom, but has other species that are edible, others that are that will make you feel pretty unwell. So good to be aware of the spore print color, not pore sprint on that, should be like a dark purplish versus a dark brown for agaricus. This is another thing that's good to know about identification, which is true of plants too, where something will look very different at different stages of its growth. And some of these mushrooms can have very different coloration when they're young versus old. And that's true of this one as well. And even the gills can change color. So this one will just get a lot darker as it ages. I think that this one is best left once it kind of gets to this really big stage. It can be used for a broth, but in terms of edibility, I think it's one that you kind of want to get when it's young. Morels, this is the one that you know, most people are out there looking for around my birthday, which is April 14th, because they're only up for a couple weeks a year. We do have 4 different local species of that. Your classic black morel is sort of the most iconic one that you see, but there are others like the half-free morel, the golden morel. You can look up those later. Sorry, I don't have photos of them all. But what is true of all of them is this pitted surface. This is what we call a cup fungus. Doesn't have pores or gills, but those cups are where it sporulates, and that can be light or dark or yellowish. There is something called a false morel, gyromitra. So it's good to kind of look at the differences there. But one of the key identifying characteristics of this versus others are that it's going to be perfectly hollow inside if you cut it in half. And that's part of what makes them really interesting culinary mushrooms, because you can stuff them. And they also will dehydrate well, but I've never really gotten enough personally to dehydrate. I usually find, you know, a couple at a time. These are mycorrhizal, so they grow in affiliation with trees. And so the mycelium with the mycorrhizal fungi attach themselves outside or inside the tree roots. So that's all going on underneath. So that's why the mycorrhizal fungi you see coming out of the soil, and you will see these singularly coming out of the soil around trees that they are, you know, basically as far out as you can find the tree roots, you can find those mushrooms. So tulip trees, elms, hemlocks, those are some of the favorite mushroom trees to affiliate with. We are at peak chanterelle season right now. I hosted a dinner party this week, and there were like, I think 7 or 8 different ways that people had prepared chanterelles. My favorite being a chanterelle gazpacho. I had a couple of folks who had also candied some chanterelles. This is another one where there are many species that broadly get named chanterelles, from your classic golden chanterelle. There's a we call it the gilled chanterelle versus the smooth gilled chanterelle. Um, and these actually don't have true gills. I mentioned this before, but what we call like false forked ridges or smooth. On the top left, you can kind of see there how they sort of run straight into the stipe there, as opposed to sort of you know, stopping right at the base. And if you looked more closely, you could see that they do not they don't go straight down, and they kind of like, you know, fork and stop. Um, you've got also what we call our cinnabars. Those are these tiny red ones at the bottom left, and also you can see them prepared at the top right. Those don't get any bigger than little baby size, but one of my dinner party guests had actually candied those, and those can be really nice in general chanterelles for both savory and sweet preparations, because they do have sort of a fruity flavor aroma, and some folks feel like that's actually one of the key identifying characteristics, to smell the underside and smell a bit of like an apricot undertone. I find it hard to pick up that apricot that you hear other folks say, but that is something distinctive to the chanterelles. Um, so yeah, the latter part of summer through early fall, you can find these. And these are also mycorrhizal. So you can find those around hardwoods and conifers, but they will be coming out of the soil itself. Oh, and at the bottom right there, those are what called black trumpets. That's in Craterellus. But they also kind of get grouped in with chanterelles, and they do share characteristics even though they're in a different genus. Chicken of the woods is another favorite. It's probably one of it, maybe my favorite wild mushroom because it is so meaty and can be used in interesting ways. It's called chicken of the woods because um, it actually tears kind of like chicken. Like if you um, take a piece of this and tear it apart, it's actually white inside. Um, it is a polypore. So if you turn the underside, you'll see that pored surface. We have two really common species that we'll find on the East Coast. The one on the right there, Latoporus sulphureus, is a bright orange and yellow. On the underside, it will be yellow. Again, this does change with age, and so it will that color will be duller with age and kind of lighten up as opposed to darkening with some of the others. Latoporus cincinnatus is the one at the bottom left, and that is what we call our white chicken, and that has like a peachier color and a lighter pore surface. These also grow in dead or dying woods. The kind of the classic thing to do with this is to use it as you would a chicken, because there are these really kind of like flat fronds. You can cook them like a chicken cutlet. I've made it chicken parmigiano with it. You can fry them up and like really dazzle your friends because it really, really does stand as a good proxy for chicken. However, it does get really tough with age. So you want to either get it when it's young, like these little chicken nugget stages. If you see the little bits, can't see where I'm pointing, but the the smaller frown at the on the top left there, or to just cut off the tender edges, because it will taste like cardboard if you let that go too far. And this is a one that people have sensitivity to, so you want to cook it well. And again, if it's your first time trying it, just try a little bit and see how you do with it. Okay, moving into fall to winter mushrooms. Hen of the Woods is also one of my favorites. You'll sometimes see this called maitake. This is one that is also cultivated, so you will find gourmet mushroom purveyors that do also cultivate this. Um, it grows often at the base of oak trees, and I say it kind of grows in a bouquet because it has these fronds that you can see that photo of me there with it. So it kind of grows with these fronds that are all attached in one big cluster. Um, and these can be huge. From one given chunk of maitake, you can get pounds and pounds of good eats. Um, and sorry for not showing more photos of this, but you'll have a light pore surface on this. You can actually kind of see the pores with the naked eye. Um, and there are a few kind of lookalikes, but the lookalikes like black staining polypore um, is also something that's edible. It's just not quite as delicious as hen in the woods. Um, a lot of people like to also use this for mushroom jerky. If you've got a dehydrator, that can be a good way to do that. Honey mushrooms are one of the most prolific mushrooms that you will find in fall. And this is a parasitic mushroom. There are a few different species of this. The ringless and the ringed honey both are edible. You can see the one at the bottom there is the ringed honey, so it does have a visible ring. These will grow in large clusters. Often I'll find like several clusters side by side in one place. Um, the coloration can be kind of yellowish or cream. Important, this one has a white spore print, so that can be good to do a spore print to be sure of that. The cap has kind of a hairy center, which you can kind of see a little bit here. Again, summer through fall. I haven't started to see these yet, but they will most definitely be popping up soon. This is one that definitely some folks do get a stomach upset, and the conventional wisdom on that is to cook them very, very well. Fun fact on this, if you've heard of the humongous fungus, um, basically the largest organism on Earth is a honey mushroom, because again, we're talking a single organism, DNA wise, if you sample that underground mycelium, it can go on for miles and miles. And this was discovered in Michigan and then later in Oregon, as being something like 8,000 years old and covering more than 770 hectares. And again, that is a single organism, which is pretty incredible. But it is parasitic. So, it is not great for trees. This is another other crazy thing where it's a parasite, but then there's another fungus that parasitizes the honeys and results in a different edible mushroom, which is called shrimp of the woods. So don't have a picture of that here, but that's one to look up as well. Cauliflower is a really fun one to find. There are Sparacis, there are a couple of different species of this. It is weakly parasitic, so it generally won't be killing your trees, but does grow in association with a number of different trees in fall. And it has these really curious flat wavy fronds. It's very pale when young, and then it kind of gets darker with age. Um, I think it's got just like a really nice, easy to cook with flavor, and you can get a lot out of, a single instance of that in terms of, how much poundage you get to cook with. You can, I like to just kind of do a stir fry with this, add it to pasta. It'll kind of soak up any flavor, which is true of a lot of these mushrooms. So good one to know. Lion's mane, this photo to the right here, this is a tree. I live right off of Georgia Avenue in DC, and there is just a street tree that produces lion's mane year after year. This is one of those tooth funguses, fungi that I had mentioned earlier. There are a couple of different species of this. This is one that you can also cultivate. You can find grow kits for, and you can see those tiny teeth on the outside. But if you cut this open, there is going to be a solid core inside that isn't really particularly tasty to eat or cook with, though it's edible. And one of the classic things to do with this is to create faux crab cakes, because it kind of shreds like crab and something that has a fishy flavor. I like to barbecue this one personally. I think it's a fun thing to kind of tear apart and do like a faux pulled pork with. And this is another one of those we talked about that that is medicinal. You can actually find products, capsules, dried, you know, um, coffee mixtures, etc., that have lion's mane as a memory booster. Wood ear and jellies, again, not a single species, but these are really a common mushroom that you'll find in Asian cooking, and one of the few that you can eat raw with no issues. Another decomposer that will grow on everything from sticks, logs, dying trees, and often really prolifically. You can see on the top right there, that was just one tree just loaded with wood ear. And they really do look like ears. You You can use this in like a cold vinegary Chinese salad. That's one of my favorite recipes. You'll see them a lot in soups. That bottom photo there, this wood ear candy that someone made for one of our Mycological Association culinary events that was fantastic. But he wouldn't give us the recipe for that one, or else I'd share that. So a really neat mushroom to know. And there are also what we call, and yeah, they kind of can feel like ear cartilage. They're really sort of bendy but tough. There's also the jellies, which can kind of look similar, but they're a lot softer. And those also you can find in Chinese cooking. Those are called cloudier, and you'll find those on Dead and Dying Wood as well. Puffballs, another one that have one common name but refer to many different species. The key thing to know about these for edibility, when you cut them open, you want them to be pure white inside, and that means that they have not started to produce spores. Once they start to produce spores, they will darken in the inside, and you do not want to eat those. This one here is this is my foraging friend and her daughter. Very excited to find a giant puffball, and we cooked this one up as little mini pizzas. I personally didn't quite like that application because you don't get that kind of crispness that you would want from a pizza crust, but a fun thing to do nevertheless. It has very little flavor, but lots of surface area to soak up whatever you're cooking with. I've seen lots of interesting recipes for that. I haven't experimented with a lot, frankly. And then the more common one that you'll see are these pear-shaped puffballs. And they don't really get any bigger than these little nuggets that you see on the left there. I like to kind of think of them as like cooking them like you would tofu, because they're kind of soft and spongy and will just kind of soak up any flavor. But again, you want to make sure that they are pure white inside. And there are other non-edible species of puffball, but they will not be pure white inside. Okay, so those were the main edible medicinal mushrooms I want to talk about, but I wanted to talk about just a few other fun species that do interesting things. These jack-o'-lanterns are a good one to know for a few reasons. One, they are poisonous, and occasionally some folks, as they're getting to know chanterelles, because they are orange, I think they're pretty easily distinguished once you know the difference. But this one is particularly toxic. They grow in these massive clusters in early fall. They are definitely a orangier color than any type of chanterelle. They have a thick orange stem. They have true gills. And again, they'll grow in these massive clusters, which is not how chanterelles grow at all. But what's cool about them is that they glow in the dark. So you can take those into a dark room. You're going to want to look at the gill side, and it can take a minute for your eyes to adjust, but as long as they are fresh, because they do lose its glow with time, you'll be able to see a nice glow in them. And they are not the only bioluminescent mushroom, but this is probably one of the most common. Inky caps, I mentioned earlier that there are some mushrooms that you need to be careful about consuming along with alcohol, and this is one of them. It actually has a common name of tippler's bane, because you will be ill if you consume these with alcohol. But they also do this fun thing where they essentially deliquesce, which is like liquefying in decomposition, and they will produce this very dark, essentially, ink that you can paint with. And so this on the right here was from an inky cap that I drew mushrooms of. So that bottom left there, that's kind of what an inky cap looks like. There's different species, inky caps, the common inky cap, shaggy manes, and those can be eaten as well. Milk caps are another fun one that you can find around this time of year. Lactarius and Lactifluus are the key genus. Some of them are really tasty. The corrugated milk cap and the voluminous milk cap are two species you can find very frequently around here, and they exude milk when the gills are injured. So if you take your fingernail and you just kind of lightly just cut on the gills, they will milk like this, and then you can taste that milk. Even an inedible milk cap, it's not going to hurt you to taste that milk, but that helps identify the difference between some of the edibles and the non-edibles. The ones that are not edible will often have a bitter and acrid taste. And there's also a really spicy one that if you cut that Lactarius piperatus, you'll get a really spicy flavor. I have read that there are some cultures that actually, like in Asia, I think India, will dry this and use this as a condiment, but you could very easily ruin the dish with that. So I don't typically see people cooking with that. I'm having a hard time seeing where the arrow is here. Move my slides forward.
No, I think you're running on. You're running on. You're good with
Okay.
time.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll just go back where I was, and we'll run through these last ones pretty quick here because I know people might have questions too. But I just love talking about some of these, I when I run into folks that say like, oh, I don't like mushrooms, it's like they're judging a whole kingdom based on a single species, Agaricus bisporus, which is what all of the button, the cremidi, portobello, that's all the same species. So I like to share that there's a lot more to it than just your common button mushroom. I mentioned the spicy. There's also sour mushrooms. There's something called beefsteak, Fistulina hepatica, which is one of the ones that's good to eat raw and actually appears to bleed when you cut it. That one makes a really nice ceviche because of the sour. We've got sweet mushrooms like your candy cap that like unmistakably taste and smells like maple syrup. And then there are bitter mushrooms, like the bitter bolete that I have used to make bitters before. So, oh, and also I learned this one last year at Sequinoda, which I'll talk about in a minute. There's actually a garlic mushroom. It's called a garlic parachute. Little tiny guys, dead on smell like garlic, which is pretty cool. And with a lot of these, we don't necessarily, these are different volatile compounds that are producing those aromas. And psychedelics as well. Again, the folks that cultivate psychedelics, it's almost always psilocybin cubensis, but there are dozens of different species that actually produce those hallucinogenic compounds. This on the right here is a species of Gymnopolis that grows right in my neighborhood. So those things are out there in the wild as well. Okay, just want to give a shout out for some favorite culinary references. As you see from this presentation, that is my orientation. I am a master naturalist and gardener, but I am also just a big foodie, and so these are some of my favorite references for cooking with wild edibles. The Forager Chef has a treasure trove of recipes online for some of the like lesser used species of mushroom. So that I've found very useful. Chad Hyatt has a couple of mushroom cookbooks that are good. Costco Bodar works with wild fermentation and has a great recipe for doing like fermented mushroom pickles. Alexis Nelson, who goes by Black Forager, great content on wild plants and fungi. My own work is called The Wildlife. I do a monthly wild food newsletter that you're welcome to join. And I also want to share a couple of places that are great sources for ongoing learning. As mentioned, I am the vice president of the Mycological Association of Washington. Incredible group of mycophiles, as we call them, from beginner to expert, and people are really generous with their knowledge. We have all sorts of different events. I'm going to tell you about a couple in a minute. Foxhaven Farm and Learning Center, they have a most of the year long foraging program that is really excellent. And they work a lot with herbalism as well. I'm not going to go into all of these here, but I also do teach workshops myself and do guided walks. My friend has a restaurant called Poplar in DC in the Brightwood neighborhood, where he cooks a lot with foraged mushrooms. That's really great. And Oyster is a Michelin-starred restaurant in DC. I can also recommend. It is a splurge meal, but it is worth it. Really, really incredible. And the owner's a James Beard Award winner as well. Last but not least, this year, I'm in charge of organizing MA's annual mushroom fair. It's going to be October 12th. It's at Brookside Gardens, which it has been for many years. We've got a really great lineup. All mushroom related vendors, demos. We're going to have expert-led mushroom walks, probably every half hour from 12 to 5. Some family-friendly activities, and it's all free. And if you are really wanting to do a deeper dive into mushrooms in all of the ways, I mean, my orientation is a culinary and medicinal, but our club, we do all sorts of things. We've got a really active DNA sequencing committee that you can get involved with. And we do an annual foray over Labor Day weekend. It's in the Northern Highlands of Pennsylvania. And it's everything from forays, presentations, workshops, culinary feasts, and a lot more. And that is actually open to all. It is, obviously, it has a fee attached, but it's really a great way to get to know the local mushroom community. So that's all I have for you. And I really appreciate your time and will welcome any questions.
I want to speak for all of us, April, to thank you. I've been recording questions as people have put them into the chat. So I'm going to pose a few to you here, but that was a very both comprehensive and understandable presentation for those of us who know very little about the mushrooms. I do have a very beginning question. You used the words sporulate, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Is that something that happens at a particular time in a mushroom's life cycle? What are you describing? I know it has something to do with the production of the spores, but
yeah, so that is simply like, you know, the production of the spores that is, you know, happening in the middle of the mushroom's life cycle, that is allowing it to basically reproduce and, you know, find, you know, new trees or, you know, to affiliate with. So that's basically the reproductive mechanism of a mushroom. And you know, happens I mean, in the middle of its life cycle, like before it, it dies essentially.
And
Before
so some of
the fruiting dies, because I'm sorry, before the fruiting body of the mushroom dies, because the mycelium underground, that's why we're saying like that humongous fungus that has survived thousands of years, that is a single organism that, I like to think of it as like, a an apple tree that will live for many, many, many years. You have that fruit that it produces, it drops off, and those seeds go on to make new trees. The tree itself lives on for the next season. So the end of the life cycle meaning of that the fruiting body itself. So I should clarify that.
And you referred to a number of mushrooms where you said they're most edible when they're younger. When they get older, they get tougher. Is that before and after that sporulation, or is it
Yeah,
related to
yeah,
size, or?
yeah. I mean, it's more because it's getting towards the end of of the fruiting body's life. And it just will dry up and become tough, or in some cases rot, just depending on the species. Like, I mean, here you've got this one that, I didn't dry this, it just naturally, so depending on the moisture content too of the mushroom, um, it will toughen up or rot.
Could you take that and pull it back near your face, because
Oh,
we can't
yeah.
see it close to the camera? Pull the mushroom back towards you. Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so that just, there's very little moisture in it, so just dries naturally, as opposed to something else that you would leave out, like the inky cap I mentioned, that will completely, liquidate into, a glass of goo.
Could you say something about the most common um, misidentification that leads people to a poisonous mushroom when they're really
Oh,
looking for something else?
gosh. It I think it really depends on the mushroom. Um, and that's why you kind of have to know what are the specific, like for example, I mentioned with the morels, they're going to be purely hollow inside with no kind of chambers. And so, I mean, there are other things that are kind of distinctive about morels, but like if, that's that to me is kind of an easy one. So you want to know for any given mushroom, what are those tells, I like to say. And the plants have the same thing, Um, usually there are several things that will distinguish a poisonous lookalike from an edible mushroom, and you just kind of want to know what those things are. I feel like a lot of times when people get in trouble, they're they're kind of taking shortcuts, and they're um, you sometimes, you'll hear people eating things and not really being sure. So, um, if you are looking online for kind of like, let's say, if you look at chanterelles, and I've told you about things with the color and the gills and the time of year, and like if you're taking all those things into consideration, I think you'd be hard pressed to make a mistake personally. But that's where, I know a lot of people who are like, understandably so, a little bit um hesitant. And that's where, like, have a make a friend with someone who is a more experienced forager, and run it by them. At the Mycological Association, we have a group of club identifiers. I am one. I know like this much compared to most of our identifiers. But I know my culinary mushrooms. And we take that very seriously. We do not serve anything at any of our gatherings that has not been checked off in person by one of our identifiers. So I think with time you get more comfortable and confident, but there's no shame in just running something by someone. Another thing to note is like sometimes, you know, you'll see a whole, this is another area where I think people can get in trouble, a whole patch of something and start harvesting and then not being really careful, and you can mix in another species that could grow side by side with all of those chanterelles or whatever. So you need to be checking each individual one and not sort of going on autopilot. And like there's something called a bluet that can look similar to some other toxic mushrooms. And you know, the conventional wisdom, to be very sure, is to do a spore print of not just one but of all of those, you know. And that may sound like overkill, but you know, there are things like that you can do to be extra safe.
So for those of us who are, I would call myself identification challenged, which applies to a lot of my gardening, not just your topic. Is there a viable way to cultivate mushrooms at home where I would be more confident and not putting myself out in a foraging situation?
For sure. The easiest way are these grow kits that they, you know, it's kind of all you have to do is add water essentially. It's super easy and fun, and you can get a few different flushes out of one grow kit. And then what I like to do, once you've taken one of those grow kits, grown a couple of flushes of mushrooms, I will throw them in my garden bed. I'm a founding member of a community garden, you know, here in DC. And one of two things will happen. You will, when it rains, you may get an extra little flush. Or, you know, it just breaks down and it's actually kind of good nutrients. Those spent mushroom blocks, you know, have nitrogen that can be good for your soil. So that's easy. The wine caps that I mentioned earlier, that's the most common one to cultivate outside. And those can grow really prolifically. So that would be one if you wanted to experiment in an outdoor garden bed. That's a good one to try. I have not done that myself though. I prefer to roam around the woods and find them myself.
So the mushroom fair will take place at Brookside Gardens, is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
And for those of us who didn't get it jotted down, we'll have this recording to share with each other to remind ourselves of particularly your sources at the end. Thank you very much for sharing those.
Oh, and Lauren here mentioned the mushroom farm. And sorry, but I guess I need more lion's mane because sometimes my brain is not working all the way, and I'm like, oh yeah. Shiitake logs are the other really popular way to cultivate your own, and you can inoculate those themselves. And when we say inoculate, that's where you are like taking spores and basically, you know, inserting them in the body of the log, or you can buy them kind of ready to go. That is more of an outdoor project. I tried to do shiitake logs indoors and didn't get them to fruit. But you can also buy those logs as well. And if you've got space outdoors, you know, you leave them outdoors and they can produce for quite some time.
Are there certain mushrooms that are easier to cultivate at home, or just any of the kits
the
would?
grow kits, I think they're all pretty easy. A lot of them are oysters and different species of oysters. And you know, they're really hard to mess up, I would say. So I would say, and if you like oyster mushrooms, if you've had them, those would be like the easiest to start with. I have not personally tried growing like the lion's mane from kits and other species, but I know people that do. And that would be one to look at. I would beware. Sometimes there are supposed kits for growing things like morels. Morels are so the kits are generally going to be those decomposers that we talked about, you know, that they are breaking down and decomposing organic matter. The saprotrophic mushrooms that are reliant on, I'm sorry, the mycorrhizal, I'm sorry. The mycorrhizal mushrooms that are growing in affiliation with living trees, like to grow those from a grow kit, I think you are about to take some, snake oil, because almost no one on the planet has been able to successfully cultivate something like a morel. There are some morel farms in China that have managed to do that, but I would stay away from those kind of kits.
That's
Find them.
because the interaction's taking place beneath the soil, between
With
the organisms in ways that we don't
affiliation with a
understand.
tree that's, yeah, right. That is not something that you're going to be able to replicate, sitting on your kitchen counter.
And one last question. It was actually the first one posed here in the chat. It was related to the wine cap, and it was talking about soil health, and then asking that if you let it just sublimate into the soils, won't it just produce more mushrooms? But I'm gathering from what you're saying that sometimes mushrooms may reproduce, other times they may just decompose like any other organic matter.
Yes. They're I mean, they're very complicated. Like every species is different. And so we didn't even talk about truffles. That's like a whole different way of propagating, essentially, because they are putting out these volatile compounds that and then your flying squirrels and other things will dig up. And so there's no like hard and fast rule of thumb for how this takes place. But yeah, join the Mycological Association to kind of get deeper into the science of that. And someone says, how can I watch past lectures? All of our meetings are actually open to the public. And if you go on YouTube, you can find all of our past recordings. So it's like you could get a huge education in mushrooms just watching past recordings from our YouTube channel. So if you want, I can send you guys the links to some of these resources for you to share it with the members after.
That would be great, and then we can share it through our website with each other.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, once again, I want to thank you on behalf of all of us who got a nice piece of education here this morning.
Well, I hope that on your next trip to the woods, you'll see something we talked about, because that's inevitably what happens. There's these things that we're kind of blind to until we're introduced to them, and then you'll see them everywhere. So, thank you again for having me.
Thank
Hey,
you.
April, everyone. Before you go, start to wrap things up here, but I want to thank you, April, for your presentation. Also want to thank, of course, our tech team and the board members that helped out with today's meeting here today. Just kind of a little reminder, we are looking for, as we mentioned earlier, if you came in a little late, for committee chair for the speakers group. We've got a good crew already there. It's very well organized. I'd be happy to talk if anybody's interested in there. It's more of an organizational leadership, more administrative. Reach out to me or Dave or Linda. We're also, again, looking for a community events co-chair and a co-chair for social events. And if you get a chance, check out the garden at the fair. If you get out to the fair this coming week. And at this point, we're going to wrap things up, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Looks, pretty reasonable out there today. So thank you guys for coming. And again, thank the tech team in April. Hope to see you guys soon. Bye, everyone.